Okay, folks, this is all about bond valuation. And I want to get a couple of ideas across first about bonds. Okay, so you're going to have several parts to this bond: a coupon rate, a maturity date, a current market rate, and we'll call the par value. Okay, now for all intents and purposes for this course, our par value is $1,000. Now that doesn't mean that's what you're going to pay for it. That means that that's what it's going to be reclaimed at the price by the issuing entity when the maturity date's reached. Now, bonds are nothing more than long-term debt. So let's take a 20-year bond. And let's say that the coupon rate is 8% and make it annual. Okay? All right, now let's say the current market rate is 10%. Okay, here's the deal. The current market rate is basically what you could have invested your money at in a likes of risk security right now. So the question is, why would you bother to buy an 8% bond when you could have earned 10%? Well, because the current market rate, 10%, might only be good for 3 months, 6 months. What you've done is you've locked in an 8% rate of return on the par value. Now that's important, okay? On the par value for 20 years. But you're still saying, well, wait a minute, that's still 2% less. Actually, it's not going to be, because the bond's going to be sold at a discount, which means less than $1,000. So you're going to get a built-in capital gain. And I'm going to show you that the price that the bond will sell at is going to equal 10% because of the capital gain, discount, and the 8% coupon. So what you've done is you've basically, if you think 10% is a good rate, you just locked it in for 20 years instead of 3 to 6 months. Now, again, the coupon rate is of par value. It doesn't matter if you buy the bond for, say, $600. You're still going to get 8% of $1,000, okay? And what you got going on here now are two different types of cash flows. You've got an annuity on the coupon rate, and you've got what they call a terminal sum, or a one-time rate or return on the par value. So here's how you're going to set this thing up, okay? You're going to have say the coupon amount. You're going to multiply that times 1 minus 1 over 1 plus I to the t divided by I. Okay? That's going to give you the present value of the annuity for the coupon rate. Plus, you're going to have the terminal sum, which is $1,000, and you're going to only get that once, so you're looking at the present value of the terminal sum. And you're going to add that up, and that's going to be the present value of the bond. That would be the most that you would pay for this thing if you wanted to earn 10%. Okay? Now, one other thing that's very important is that anytime the coupon rate is less than, okay, the current market rate, the bond sells at discount, which is less than $1,000. Okay? It's automatic. All right, and for your test, you're going to have a discount bond. So, okay, given that wonderful information, let me go over here and show you how this works. All right, so we've got $80, and we're going to multiply that times 1 minus 1 over, all right, 1.10, the current market rate, and that's going to be for 20 years, okay? Plus 1,000 times 1 over 1.10 to the 20th. Because you're discounting at the rate that you could have earned. That's your opportunity cost, all right? So let me work this on my little calculator here. It's going to give you This is a factor, let me write it up here, 8.5136. And this factor is 0.1486. So if you multiply 1,000 times that number, you get 148.64. Okay? And if you multiply you get 681, the $80, times your factor up there, and make it 09, add them together. And here's what you get, 829, I round it up, 73. That would be the most that you would pay for this bond if you wanted to earn 10% on your investment. Okay, but say you don't want to go through all that rigmarole with all these formulas. What do? Well, 80, and you hit your payment button. Okay, 1,000 is your future value. 20 is your in, and 10 is your IY. Those are the buttons that you hit. Then ask it to compute PV, present value. And let's see what you get. You should get the same number. And well, you do. If you hit those numbers, those buttons, these are your buttons here, okay? You will get 829.73. So it's up to you if you want to use the formulas, or we'll put a big or there, you can use the buttons. Either way, you're going to get the same number. But this is how this thing works, okay? So let's do a bond problem based off of the numbers not numbers, but the format that I just gave you. Okay, so what I'm going to do for you is, before I do it though, I got to tell you one other thing. We're going to be looking for 4 answers to a bond problem. Number 1, you want to find the present value of the bond. Okay, now we're talking about a discount bond here, folks, meaning it's going to sell at less than $1,000. So the present value of the bond has to be less than $1,000. Okay, number 2, you're looking for the current yield on the bond, and I'm going to explain what that is. And that's got to be greater than the coupon rate. This is how it has to work. Number 3, you're going to look for what they call the holding period return. Okay, what you received as a return on your investment over the period of time that you held the bond. That's got to be greater than your current yield. And then number 4, yield to first call. And I'm going to explain that. But if you think about it, if you go in and get a mortgage, 5 years later, interest rates have dropped. Don't you want to be able to refinance your house? Sure you do. Well, the bond issuer wants the same advantage here. So what he does is he's giving you a 5-year call protection on a bond. After 5 years, if he wants to, he can call the bond on the anniversary of the issue every year. So if you've got a 25-year bond, there are basically 20 calls. 5 years you're protected. They can't call no matter what happens, but if they want to call after that, they can. But it has to be on the anniversary issue date of the bond each year. All right, we're only going to be worried about the first call. Anyway, it's got to be greater than the holding period return. And let me write this down. HPR, and this is yield to first call. That's what those things stand for. It's easier because I'm lazy. Don't want to write it out. That you need to understand. This is how it has to work out. Okay? All right. So now that we got that, let's deal with something here. Okay? Look at problem number 5-12. Okay? And this is on page 227 in your textbook. All right. So what you got there is a 10-year, and he's already got you into this, 12% semi coupon rate. All right. And it's got a par, $1,000 par. And let's see. And it's got a call of price of $1,060. I'll explain that in just a second. Okay. And current market price of the bond is $1,100. Okay. Okay. So it's a little bit different from what I've just done, but this will give you an idea of how we're going to work this, and I'll work one out for you in just a second. All right, 10-year maturity, and let's see, and it can be called in 4 years. Right? Okay. So he asked, so what's the yield to maturity of this bond? All right. Well, it's semi-annual. So that means you're going to have N of 20, okay? Because it's going to pay every 6 months. You're going to have 2 different periods every year of a payment. That means that it's 6%. Well, okay. Let me explain this before I put this up here. It says 12% semi-annual coupon. Okay, remember that's 12% of $1,000. That's $120. So that's going to be $60 each 6 months as a payment. Okay, got a call price of $10.60, but we're not going to worry about that right now. The yield to maturity is assuming that you're going to be able to keep the bond outstanding for the whole time. Okay, so you've got, it's a 10 years, so we've got 20 periods, 2 periods a year. $60 is our payment. $1,000, assuming it doesn't get called, is our future value. And the current market price is $1,100. Got to make that a plus minus, and that's your present value. So you're asking for it to compute your IY. What are you earning as a rate of return on your investment? All right, let me look these numbers up. Okay, what you're going to get is 5.1849 as a rate of return. But understand something, that's a 6-month rate because you've asked it to calculate it on 6 months. So if you multiply that by 2, you'll get an APR, annual percentage rate, and that's 10.37%. Okay, so that's the answer to part A. This is part A for this problem. 10.37%. All right. Says, well, let's take it over here. So what's the bond's current yield? Okay. Well, that's pretty easy. The current yield is basically, what do you get paid every 6 months? Well, you get $60 every 6 months, but you get it twice a year. Okay. So the current yield is going to say, all right, great. Well, what are you making year in and year out on your return? Well, all right, if you paid $1,100 for this thing, this is your return, and this is your investment. So if you take 120 and divide it by 1,100, you get this number, 1091. Okay? And again, your current yield had to be greater, okay, than your yield in this case, than your yield to maturity, because you have got a premium bond here. This is just the opposite to everything I told you earlier. You bought a bond for more than $1,000. So what happens is the key that I gave you earlier is reversed. All right? So your present value bond has to be greater than $1,000. Your your current yield has to be greater than your yield to maturity and vice versa. But this is how I'm going to give you a bond problem or example, exactly how you're going to have it on the test in just a minute. I just want to show you how these things work. All right. All right. So we're going to do one more here, part C. Part C says, well, let me do part D rather. This will be easier and just maybe more relevant here. Part D to this problem says, okay, well, what's the bond yield to call? Yield to call. Okay. Well, all right, so what have you got? Go back over here, and we've got a 10-year bond, but it can be called in 4 years. All right, so 4 times 2. So your N is 8. All right, you're going to have the same payment, $60 is your same payment, because the bond can be called in 4 years, and it pays twice a year. So there's your 8. All right, and it's going to be called for, wait a minute, 1060, okay? So 1060 is going to be your future value, okay? And your current price of the bond is $1,100 plus minus PV. So you can ask it to compute your IY. All right? So here we go. Let me figure this. 8 my N, 60 is my payment, 1060 is your future value, 1100 change signs is your present value, so there's your I. And you're going to get 5.0748%, and again, that's a 6-month rate, so multiply it by 2, and this is your APR, and you're going to get 10.15% as your yield to call. Okay, so that's how a premium bond works. So premium means pay more than $1,000, pay more than par, if you will, which is $1,000. And it happens, but not very often. Okay, great. Well, that's wonderful. So why don't we figure out or do a problem just like the one you're going to have on your test? Okay. All right. So here we go. Let's start off with this. Let's say you got $1,000 par. And let's say, one other thing too. Bonds are traded in 0.30%. 1/32%. Okay? So we're going to have to deal with that too. All right, $1,000 par. Let's say it's a 23-year bond maturity, but it's, say, 2 years old. It's already been outstanding for 2 years. So basically, you're buying a bond that has 21 years left, okay? And it's got a 7 11/32% semi-annual coupon rate, okay? And it's got a 5-year call at 103/8% of par, okay? And the current market rate is, say, 9 5/16%. All right? Okay, first things first. The coupon rate is going to be less than the current market rate. So you know you've got a discount bond, okay? All right. So here we go. Let's figure out the PV of the bond first, okay? All right, well, you got $1,000. You know that's going to be your future value, okay? You've got 2142 is your N, and I got that by taking a 23-year bond minus 2 years times 2, because it's 2 years old. We're talking about this right here. Okay, this relates to this one. Thing's 2 years old, and it pays twice a year. All right, 42 N. Okay, so what's my payment going to be? Well, let me figure that for you. it's going to be 36.72. That's your payment. How did I get that? Well, okay. You're going to take, you've got, and this relates to this number right here. You got to take 7 and 11/32 and convert it to a decimal, multiply it by your par, which is 1,000, and divide by 2 because it's a semi-annual payment. So how do you do that? Well, all right, 11 divided by 32 equals plus 7 equals times 0.01 equals. All right, folks, what is all that? Well, everything, we're not done yet, then times 1,000 equals, and then, divided by 2 equals, and that'll give you my number. And what I just did was exactly what I told you. In brackets, everything in the brackets here converts 7 and 11/32 to a decimal. The reason you multiply it by 0.01 is you're going to move it over 2 decimal places. Anytime you multiply a number by 0.01, you're moving it 2 decimal places, okay? You've got to hit each of the, you got to hit each of these equals buttons. If you don't, your calculator isn't going to do the calculation. All right. And then times 1,000, which is par, divided by 2, which makes it a semi-annual bond equals, and you get my number. All right. So what's left? The IY. Okay. All right. Well, your IY is going to be related to this number right here. Okay. Now, let me tell you about your calculator. Anytime you hit the IY button, it knows it's an interest rate. So you don't have to multiply this one by 0.01. You did for the payment. So what you're going to do is you're going to take 5 divided by 16 equals plus 9 equals divided by 2 equals. That's going to give you this number. Well, let me find out what that number is. Hold on just a second. It is 4.6563. Okay, and again, that's related to this. Okay, so then hit compute PV after you've got all that wonderful stuff sitting in there. All right, let me do that for you. And here's the number you get. It had to be less than 1,000. You knew that. 819.87. Okay. So that would be what the max that you would pay for this bond if you wanted to earn 9 5/16%, which is current market rate on your investment. Okay. So what's next? Well, let's talk about the current yield then. Okay, now we know, since it's a discount bond, that the current yield has to be greater than the coupon rate. Okay, so what do we got? Well, it doesn't matter what order you start them in. You're going to have 36.72 as your payment. Well, there's an easier way to do this. Let's just do it this way. How many times a year do you get that payment? Twice. Okay. And we're going to divide that by what we paid for the bond, which you just figured right here, 819.87. Okay, so what does that give you? 36.72, 2 times. You get this number, 0.0896. Okay, so that's your current yield. Well, folks, that's greater than your coupon rate, which is what it had to be. It's almost 9%. Okay. Now, let's go on over here, and let's figure out what our holding period return yield is going to be. Okay, you're going to have the same payment, 36.72. That didn't change. All right. And if you hold it to maturity, okay, well, wait a minute. Let me add one more thing here. Let's start up here. Let's say you're going to sell 2 years prior to maturity. I'm adding one more idea here for, say, $930. Okay? All right. that $930 is going to play a role here in the number we're just playing with. Okay, so HPR, let me get this out of the way. $930 is going to be your future value. Okay, I just gave it to you right here because we're not going to hold it to maturity. N is going to be a little bit different, okay, because N is going to be 38, I believe. Now, how did I get that? Well, I got that by doing this. I love this screen. All right, 38. You're going to have a, let me go back over here. Hold on a second. So I can figure out what I started with. 23-year bond, okay. So it's 23 minus 2 minus 2, okay. You're going to lose 2. You're buying a bond that's 2 years old. So on a 20, you're only getting 21 years, but you're selling it 2 years earlier. So you're really only getting a bond that's 19 years. And then you multiply that times 2. So your holding period is really 38 in or 19 years because you're losing 2 on the front end, 2 years, and you're losing 2 on the back side. Okay. So then, all right, you're going to get 930 for a future value, and here's your plus minus PV. You paid, how much did you pay? What did I say? 819. There we go. 87 for this thing. Okay. So compute IY. All right, let me do that for you. You get 4.6149%. Again, that's a 6-month rate. Multiply it by 2. That's going to give you 9.22. 98%. And you knew this had to be greater than this number. And it is. So that means you would get almost 9.23% on your investment if you held it to maturity or till 2 years before it matured, excuse me. All right, last one. Yield to first call. Okay. 2 numbers don't change. 36.72 is still your payment. All right. And they told you earlier that you're going to get, here we go. If they call it, you get 103/8% of par. Well, 100% of par would be $1,000. So you know it's going to be just a little bit greater than $1,000. So what you're going to do is you're going to take 3 divided by 8 equals plus 100 equals times 0.01 equals, then times 1,000 equals. And that'll give you what your future value is going to be. So let me do that for you. It's going to be 1,375. Okay. All right. Well, what'd you pay for it? Well, here we go again. Same number up here, 819.87. All right. Now, how many in have you got? All right. It's a 5-year call. So 5-year call. The bond's 2 years old when you bought it. Okay. So N is 6. They can call it in 5 years. You're 2 year into a 5-year call. All right. So let's see what we come up with here. 7.5694. Okay, but again, it's a 6-month rate. Multiply it by 2. Now, and you know this number, this number has to be greater than that number. It is 15.1388%. So that, folks, is bond valuation, which includes call provisions, 0.30% in valuation, sold at discount, and semi-annual. And you're going to have one just like this that I just went over for you on your test. Okay? So, I hope this makes sense. And if you have questions, I'll be talking to you Monday, just coming up tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. So have a great rest of your weekend.